Queen Victoria didn't support women voting, and she also called her own kids ugly. But that's still not as crazy as starving a million Irish people to death. She's what I like to call a complicated woman. So welcome to the story of Queen Victoria. This is part 2 of the Queen Victoria series, so we already went over her entire life getting to the throne when she's 18, so we're gonna pick it up at her turning 19 and ruling England. And in her second year on the throne, she starts to face some challenges. Lord Melbourne, the British Prime Minister's support was crucial to Victoria's smooth transition of power. But because of the Queen and the Prime Minister having such a strong working relationship, the dork-ass losers in Parliament started saying Victoria was under his old dusty crusty thumb and control, even spreading rumors that the two of them were romantically involved, despite the 40-year age gap between them. And it seems to me to have been more of a mentee-mentor relationship. She had a few dust-ups early on in her reign, the first one with a lady-in-waiting, and the second one with who was going to be staffing her bedchamber. The early 1840s were very Real Housewives of Buckingham Palace. And apparently the government really cared about who was staffing the Queen's bedchamber. Politics at this time are flip-flopping and the prime ministers are catfighting. And eventually Victoria is like, all right, brokies, call my cousin Albert, I'm ready to get married. She met with the Privy Council, told them all about her plans to marry, and February 10th, 1840, the couple got married. And she married her cousin for love, but also as means of a strong political alliance, since her cousin husband Albert is a German prince. And the people of London flooded the streets while Victoria was on her way to the chapel in her white satin dress because everyone wanted to catch a glimpse of the Queen on the way to her wedding. She was done up dripping in jewels and flowers, and that white satin dress is something that's mimicked even to this day. Victoria very famously kept a diary through her entire life, and she did write that her wedding day with Albert was the happiest day of her life. Cute! She would quickly get knocked up by her cousin, and Albert would take on more and more of her duties as she prepared for birth and motherhood. And while on a trip to visit her mother in the countryside, some guy tried and failed to Luigi the Queen, but he missed, and he got deported to Australia. And that attempt on her life did help Victoria gain more sympathetic favor, but on the flip side, it also encouraged a lot of copycats. And people tried to shoot her like 4 or 5 more times. One time she used herself as like human bait and went out there because she knew that someone was trying to assassinate her, and she tried to like lure them out so the police could get them. Just wild shit actually when you think about it. But back to that first assassination attempt, she was really shaken up by that, but she didn't have much time to dwell on it because she was due with her first child very soon. She gave birth to her first child, a girl named Victoria, who went by the nickname Princess Vicky and was known to be her husband Albert's favorite child. Very quickly after, she had her son, the future king, and then 7 more kids, for eventually a total of 9 children, ranging 17 years in age. So despite giving birth 9 times, she famously despised breastfeeding, opting instead for wet nurses and advocated for the use of chloroform as pain management for birth, though that was against medical advice. And Queen Victoria was pretty moderate in her lifestyle. She ran a pretty simple household, finding an almost sense of duty to show traditional values to the public. They were releasing illustrations of their family traditions to the press, things like decorating a Christmas tree together. And they are credited with popularizing decorating a Christmas tree. So if you thought you were hanging those Spider-Man ornaments for Jesus, it's actually for Queen Victoria and her cousin husband. The public liked her devotion to her husband and her children, and the pair stood as a united front, with Victoria relinquishing a lot of her power both officially and unofficially to her cousin husband Albert. For as prosperous as this time was, it wasn't without its challenges. And in the mid-late 1840s, the Irish are rocked with a famine, which earned Victoria the nickname the Famine Queen. The famine is seen as a very large stain on Victoria's reign, though she is credited for donating £2,000 of her own money to the British Relief Association, which technically was the largest individual donation. But what's often left out of that narrative is that the Ottoman Sultan offered £10,000 of his own money, but was blocked by the British. And the Sultan is a real one, so he still sneaks chips of food into Ireland. Victoria did support the repeal of the Corn Laws that were fucking up the Irish economy though. And when she visited Ireland in 1849, she was pretty well received, but the famine was near its end by that point. The Ottomans and the Irish though, they're like this. And her foreign relations were pretty decent too. She was the first English monarch since that fat bastard King Henry VIII to visit a French monarch. Foreign relations weren't the only avenue that Victoria and Albert seemed to thrive. They also excelled in trade and entertaining the pores with things like the Grand Exhibition. And entertaining the pores is very important in preventing a rebellious uprising against the monarchy, like we're seeing in other nations across Europe in this time. So put on the Great Exhibition, put a cheap entry price on it, and let these brokies see the world. Blowing the mind of the rich and poor alike with marvelous displays of science, art, and culture. A lot of foreign noblemen also loved the Great Exhibition. And foreign nobles liking your shit is really important at this time because Albert and Victoria have 9 children they need to marry off across Europe. And you might be thinking, why are marriages so important? Well, we'll get into it, but basically, Albert and Victoria's grandchildren start World War I. So technically these marriages do kill like 20 million people. So if you want to know who married who and how the fuck they managed that, as well as the rest of Queen Victoria's story, and there is a lot left to tell in the Queen Victoria story. We haven't even gotten to the camera being invented, or her Indian servant boyfriend, or her goth phase yet. God damn, she's messy. Make sure you're following me and leave a comment so the app knows you like it. I'll see you in the next one.